Several years ago, I had a dog named Babe, who wasn't the smartest animal in the world. I would try to point out to her the squirrels and cats who were boldly encroaching on her backyard territory, but she would never get the hang of what a pointing finger meant. Instead of looking in the direction of the fingers, she would stare intently at my outstretched hand while ignoring any activity that was happening in the yard. I've read that commentators routinely remark that this morning's parable of the dishonest manager, found in the opening verses of the 16th chapter of Luke, stands among the most challenging texts in the New Testament, often regarding it as the most perplexing of Jesus' parables. And if that's true, it's because we are like Babe, diligently studying and dissecting the parable instead of looking in the direction of which it is pointing. I think our problem arises when we start moralizing about the parable. We're introduced to a manager who has been rightly accused of squandering the master's property. And instead of doing the right thing, like working himself out of debt, he starts making fast money deals with the people who owe the master money until he comes up with the funds he needs to get himself out of debt. Now, clearly, this was a wrong way to repair his misdeeds. In fact, it sounds too much like the dishonest misdealings of our own times, such as that of the Enron scandal. Our tendency is to condemn the manager for his behavior. But if we do so, we're liable to find ourselves stuck in a quandary because the parable ends with the master complimenting the dishonest manager for fixing things with his shady deals. And we, the audience, find ourselves left with more questions than answers. Is Jesus telling us it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and if we're going to survive, we'll have to play by the rules of the world? It would certainly seem so. At least it does until we drop all moralizations from our interpretation of the parable. What if the point of the parable is that the shrewd manager was simply doing what he did best in order to make things better? Rather than going to reform school and becoming a model citizen, he decided to do what he was really good at, arranging and plotting whatever fast money deals needed to happen in order to get himself out of hot water and make things better for the master's bank account. And so what if that's the point of the parable? Do what we're good at. Use our resources, regardless of how unlikely they seem to be, in order to further God's dominion on earth. Or put another way, in a more secular way, doing what we do best in order to make the world a better place. Billionaires Warren Buffett and Bill and Melinda Gates did just that sort of thing a little over a year ago. They met for dinner, came up with what can be called the biggest fundraising drive in history. They welcomed donors of any kind, but their direct target were billionaires, whom they personally knew. Their goal was to zero in on the super rich, starting with the Forbes list of the 400 wealthiest Americans to pledge, literally pledge, at least 50% of their net worth to charity during their lifetimes or at death. If those 400 were to give 50% of their net worth away during their lifetimes or death, that would be $600 billion. You can think of that colossal amount as what the Buffett and Gates team is stalking at a minimum. This is one example of some people doing what they do best, that being to make money, to make the world a better place. And rightly so, you and I say. They won't be suffering any, even at half the amount of money they rake in. No, but the point is, they're doing what they are good at to bring good into the world. Can we? Maybe we can't join in their fundraising effort, but we need to think about what we could do.